What's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where Mike, what do we do?
We process blue for you.
That's right. He's Mike K. I'm Alex Zetlow. We are Carolina Panthers beat writers for the Charlotte Observer, and we have some things to talk about. The big one is Bryce Young, and we're also going to talk a little bit about Bryce Young and probably some Bryce Young. But for real. We'll talk about his franchise record-setting day, where the offense goes from here, some under-the-radar stars on defense, and then preview the Panthers' only primetime game when they take on the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. But before all that, Mike, I wanted to post something to you, and forgive me, this might be a little sensational, but whatever. I stumbled across this stat. There are this group of stats as I was preparing for this podcast, and I just looked at Tom Brady's record against his division opponents throughout his career. Against the Bills, he was 33-3. Against the Jets, he was 31-8. Against the Dolphins, he was 24-12. Mike, are you ready on this podcast in front of the world to say that Bryce Young is Tom Brady to the Atlanta Falcons?
I don't know if we're there yet, but I do know that I want to live in a place where I feel as comfortable as Bryce Young feels in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, if you even go back to college, he balled out there. Man, what a performance. I'm sure we're going to get into that pretty quickly, but I mean, it was a refreshing sight to see because I stick by everything I've said over the last few weeks. This offense wasn't working. It wasn't. Canales and Young just weren't vibing together from play calling standpoint. So it was cool to see them adjust. I think the previous outlook on them was both regressed, and I don't think you could be high on one without the other or low on one without the other. And I think right now the arrow is pointing up for both of them, given the way that Bryce Young played on Sunday.
And there's nothing like a trip to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for medicine when it comes to Bryce Young. 4 of his 12 NFL wins have come against the Falcons. And the most recent one was probably his most impressive of his career. 31 completions on 45 passes, 448 yards, 3 touchdowns. He took 5 sacks, had 1.5 ankles by the time the game was over, limping to the post-game press conference, whatever. It was all.
Can you bet on 1.5 ankles? Like the over-under on how many ankles you have?
I don't know. I put that in the story, and my editor just texted me and was just like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, okay, yeah, change it. It's fine. But, the editor's not on this podcast, so I'm just going to say it. I don't think it makes any sense, but whatever. He did so throwing short. He did so throwing long. He threw inside and outside the numbers. Mike, you kind of already started down this path. But just generally, and then we'll go more specific, what made him so effective on Sunday?
He was accurate. He was decisive. I mean, I have no criticisms. He was terrific. I mean, frankly, it was, we talk about last year's season finale as his signature game. Well, he topped that and then some. Not every pass was perfect, but he was so decisive and played so well that it didn't really matter. I mean, some of these throws down the field, his comfort zone is 15 yards. When he can control the intermediate area of the field, he's going to set guys up for success, for yards after the catch. And it just kind of seemed like in maybe the 6 weeks prior, he was less in tune with that area of the field. I mean, if you go back to his college days, he would improvise. He would throw about 15 to 18 yards down the field, set guys up for success, occasionally just airlift a ball, the way he did to Xavier Legette for that 33-yard touchdown. Look, I think he looked like Bama Bryce, and we hadn't seen Bama Bryce in a long time, whether that was because of play calling, whether that was because of trust of his receivers, whether that was because of anything. I think this is a nuanced conversation, and I think that's kind of been missed, obviously, on social media. Somebody either is a true, diehard believer of Bryce Young, somebody is a true hater of Bryce Young. Really, the reality is that this is a week-to-week league, and being beat writers, we have to objectively report what's happening and then form analysis off of that. Bryce didn't look good for 3 weeks. The proof's in the pudding here. In his previous 3 weeks, while he led 2 game-winning drives, had 84 less yards and 2 less touchdowns than he had in an entire game against the Atlanta Falcons.
Yep.
They hadn't thrown a passing touchdown, including Andy Dalton, in roughly a month since the Jets game. That's the reality. The play calling was not working. Bryce was not working, whether that was because of the other variables. But clearly, they went back to the lab. They opened things up using T-Mac in multiple different ways, forcing the ball sometimes to Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker, trying to get them involved early. If you look at the opening script from the first drive, they immediately targeted the tight ends and quick hitters.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to gain momentum, and I think he delivered. I don't have any criticisms of that performance whatsoever. At all. No criticisms whatsoever. He was spectacular. And that's kind of my general take.
I think that that's really fair. And I just like diving into and I know that these can be maneuvered and manipulated in several different ways, but you look at his Pro Football Focus stats, and they're not like all that different from previous weeks, which kind of, like, for instance, he had 2 big time throws, which is a category that Pro Football Focus uses to show when a quarterback throws like a ball in a really tight window or that's deep down the field and really accurate. His average depth of target was 7.3 yards. You'd think that with a 448-yard game, he's really pushing the ball down the field. Well, when you actually watch the game, it was a lot of just really good scheme and then a lot of really good yards after the catch. The Panthers still dropped the ball. According to Pro Football Reference or Pro Football Focus, there were 2 drops in the game, which is about the same for the season. And he was under pressure a ton. Yes, he got sacked 5 times, and perhaps his mobility kind of helped these pressures. But like, you'd normally think, oh, if a quarterback's going to have a baller day, the offensive line is just going to protect him at will. Well, there were clear misblocking assignments a couple times, none more obvious than when he went down and got hurt. There was a cornerback was just chilling right over the center, and Bryce and Rico both pointed to him before the play happened, and Rico just didn't block him. He was scanning the other side of the line and this guy just had was untouched to Bryce, and that's ultimately what caused the ankle. Rico eventually took responsibility for that and then ultimately lifted up his quarterback later in the game with 100 scrimmage yards. All is fine on that front. But I really like the nuance that you're bringing to this conversation, and those stats kind of show why. But I also want to take a bigger picture look at this. Those 448 yards is also 23% of his entire passing yardage for the season. It's week 11. 23% is that 448 yards. Okay. He led his 10th game-winning touchdown drive, which is wonderful. That's the most in the NFL since 2023. But that's 10 game-winning touchdown drives, not touchdown drive, game-winning drives for 12 total wins in the NFL. We talked about a Bryce Young dilemma 2.0 last week. And I went into the elevator with you after the game. It was like really late, and we're about to head back home to Charlotte. And I kind of instinctively just like, yeah, nah, like they gotta pick up his 5th-year option now. Continuing this conversation about what the Panthers should do. And I'm wondering if you think that is crazy now, considering, like, when you take a couple steps back away from the emotion and the absolute wonder that he was on Sunday. Do you think that this one game could dictate his future in Carolina, or do you still need to have all this nuance from the entire season?
I'm on the side of patience. I mean, why make a decision when you don't have to? There are 6 games left. He's now about to face the bulk of the difficulty in the schedule. Let's see what he can do. I mean, would I lean heavier towards picking it up than not picking it up after that game? Sure, but I think bad organizations make decisions off one game, good or bad. We saw reporting that part of the reason why the Vikings passed on re-signing Sam Darnold is he was not effective against the Rams. Now we see him as an MVP candidate, his performance against the Rams this week notwithstanding. So I think for the Panthers, it behooves them to continue to watch. This is one game in totality. This is not the season in totality. He has only thrown for more than 200 yards twice. I think you also have to consider what the head coach wants. Does the head coach continue to feel comfortable airing it out this way? Does he view Bryce as a long-term answer? We don't know that. We also don't know what led to the struggles over the last week. There's so many variables. I understand people want to jump to conclusions, but the reality is, Dave Canales got up there on Monday and said a lot of the passing execution was organic. A lot of it was based on chemistry and execution. There's normally thoughts in the plan to spread the ball around. We don't know what clicked here out of the two. Granted, Bryce was on fire. He was terrific. I mean, I don't know how you come away from that, hater or not, and say Bryce just balled out. I mean, that was an all-time significant performance for a Panthers quarterback. Take the yards away, right? He led, I believe it was 6 scoring drives. 6 players created 9 completions of 20 yards or more. They came in with 21 of those style plays.
It's insane. Yep.
Tommy Tremble was set up for success as the last read on a play. I think you can't take anything away from Bryce's performance from a negative standpoint. That said, if you wanted to be devil's advocate, you could say, cool, he does this against Atlanta pretty regularly. Superman's powered by the sun, Bryce Young's powered by, I guess the Mercedes-Benz opening that shows the skyline. I don't know. But I do think this was encouraging. I do think it's proof in the pudding that they do need to air it out more, that they need to call those plays. I think Brad and Dave had a really good opening script. I think all of my criticisms of the passing offense last week were validated by the fact that you saw how much more success they had when it wasn't the T-Mac show. And they took advantage of him being a decoy. They moved him around. He wasn't just a sacrificial exit times where he was getting bracketed. There were times where guys were benefiting because of the coverage on T-Mac, which allowed him to kind of stay in the game and consistently produce. I mean, he won a scramble drill for a touchdown in the fourth quarter when he was being bracketed. He had the energy. If you missed the article on charlotteobserver.com, I wrote about how forcing the ball to T-Mac has become a stale product for the Panthers. He was making up 54% of the wide receiver production share and then was falling apart or disappearing in the second half because teams were bracketing him or what have you. Well, he was awesome in the second half, and they benefited from him because other guys were getting work, other guys were taking hits because they were getting completions. I think it all kind of worked, man. My hat is off to the play calling and chemistry of Dave Canales, Brad Isaac, and Bryce Young. I do think the decisiveness is the most important part of all this. Bryce looked comfortable targeting pretty much everybody, and that was established on the opening drive. He ended up targeting, I believe it was 9 different players.
Yeah.
5 different players had 50 or more yards. Bravo to them. I don't know how you take anything negative away from all this. I mean, Dave had some good plays that he'd probably want back, but from a passing offensive standpoint, this was their Emmy tape.
So I wanted to ask you about where the offense goes from here at this point. And when I ask this question, here's what's ringing in my mind. The Panthers were, I think, a little late to the decision to go to Rico Dowdle. Um, I because Chuba and Rico were splitting series
Oh, you mean on the season?
on the season,
Okay.
yes. They were a little late to get to make that shift because they really trusted Chuba and he was coming off a 1,000-yard season, whatever. Once they made that shift, this offense has transformed a little bit. They also got kind of blindsided by the Saints when the Saints were like, okay, we're just going to crash our outside edge defenders and just prevent this run game from beating us, and we're going to force Bryce to beat us by throwing to the numbers and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Falcons game was the first time, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Falcons game was the first time where this offensive coaching staff and the play calling was ahead of the game, was anticipating what Jeff Ulbrich of the Atlanta Falcons, the defensive coordinator, was going to do, and said, okay, we're going to know your game plan and we're going to beat you for it, or beat you at it. And now that has been established, what is the next step for this offense? I'm not sure they have any more game planning tricks up their sleeves, so to speak, or at least any obvious ones. So, Mike, what does the offense do from here? Where does it go from here? How can it continue to evolve and continue to surprise people?
So if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you know I've consistently said that it's not just about what you do. I love when coaches say that because that's not true. It's about what the other team does as well. And I think they found like a nice niche of seeing tendencies, whether it was personnel tendencies, coverage tendencies, aggression, like the aggressiveness of the safeties, which I think played a factor into this whole thing. They took advantage of coverage tendencies in this game, and it worked out. They're going to have to do the same thing against the 49ers, who we'll get into later. And I got to tell you, they've got some coverage issues in that defense. So I think every time you have a big performance, you typically want to recalibrate, right? And then say, okay, cool. Well, we want more run than we had. We want little less, probably less pass and exposure to Bryce than we had. You constantly are trying to change that. I think the Rico Dow train slowed down a bit. I mean, we've seen that he's had some soft tissue injuries and has nursed some stuff. I actually think Chuba's looked really good as a runner the last 2 weeks. As a pass catcher, not really. But
that was a brutal drive.
Yeah, that was tough.
Yeah.
That said, I think you do more of a 50-50 share. I'm sorry, fantasy folks, but Chuba's looking pretty good as a runner. I also like that they got ETN involved early. He's really, he's dynamic. They can do things with him if he gets to be part of the recipe there, especially early on in games. I think that helps because it gives you like a natural change of pace, and then you keep Chuba reserved and Rico not having to like be force fed. I kind of like the drive on drive thing, but with ETN sprinkling in as a change of pace. You're getting like all three guys involved and you're doing all that type of stuff. What I'd like to see more is the tight ends. I think this tight end trio has done a pretty nice job. If you put their numbers together, I don't have them in front of me, but they equal up to a pretty good number one tight end. Obviously, it's three guys. And I really think Mitchell Evans has evolved a lot as a route runner. Since being here, I give Pat McPherson a lot of credit because I was not impressed with him at all during training camp. I think Tommy Tremble's a late game kind of guy. Like, he gets up for that stuff. I was really happy for him. He's one of the best quotes in the locker room. And I knew once I got there, he was going in the newsletter on that 54-yard catch and run, which was his signature moment of his career. And the 54-yarder is the longest completion of the season, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I'd like to see them use the tight ends more. And I think with San Francisco, they're going to have a big opportunity there.
Nice. Okay, that's a lot about the offense and a lot of really good stuff about the offense. I want to touch on the defense for just a split second. The defense, for the most part, played really well, particularly in the second half. Only 6 points allowed after halftime. And I'm not sure how anyone could have thought that was possible, considering how fast the Falcons got off to, or how fast of a start the Falcons got off to with Bijan Robinson, uh, just like kind of forcing the entire team to miss, with Drake London doing Drake London things, with Michael Penix Jr. playing really well at quarterback. In the second half, they really settled in, and they settled in really for two under the radar stars taking the spotlight. Those two guys are Corey Thornton and Claudin Cherilus. Claudin Cherilus obviously came in for Trevin Wallace. He was the inside linebacker spot. He wasn't wearing the green dot. That was Christian Roseboom, the other starting linebacker. But when Christian Roseboom hurt his hamstring and didn't return to the game late in the fourth quarter, Claudin kind of assumed those green dot responsibilities, and he actually made the biggest play of the game on defense, in my opinion, in that fourth quarter with Roseboom out. It was a slant in which Drake London kind of broke free of J.C. Horn, and Cherilus just read it really well. He sprinted right to London and lowered the boom on him and forced a drop, which forced a field goal. And if the Falcons would have scored a touchdown that play, that's all she wrote. The game's over. It would have been a 9-point game. And then that play really just helped everything happen. So Claudin Cherilus, a career-high 10 tackles, played a season-high 52 snaps on defense, 79% of all the plays. That's great. The other side, Corey Thornton, he had a pretty good game from what I could tell on just rewatching film. 46 snaps, 69.7% of all defensive plays. His opportunity was probably made because Lathan Ransom was out with a ham injury, and yes, they play different positions, but the Panthers schemed around getting Corey into the game. So, Mike, when I just list that waterfall of information about these two under the radar guys, what do you make of how EJ Evero was able to deploy them?
Well, I think he knows his talent, right? He has been around Cherilus for 3 years. He's extremely well prepared, according to everybody you talk to. He's a very good vocal guy. He's not the loudest dude, but he will talk. He's been a cool guy to cover too, just because he's got a great perspective as an undrafted guy out of an HBCU who got cut by the Jets and immediately claimed by the Panthers. The front office really, really liked his tape. I think it's also a credit to the front office. I think, Dan Morgan and his crew have found guys within the nooks and crannies of the NFL waiver wire and the undrafted scene. You see how Corey Thornton's playing. You saw Ben Martin Scott get a forced fumble on a kickoff. He's done really well on special teams. Claudin's playing well. I'd argue Claudin had a better performance in this game than Roseboom, who still, I think, is very clearly uncomfortable being the green dot, even though he knows the defense. I thought there was they struggled a little bit more in coverage than I thought they would. But Drake London is Drake London. We talked about tendencies. It seemed like the Falcons really played to the tendencies of the defense. They found holes in the zones and were just eating it apart. Before Penix went down, they were just moving the ball at will. I do think they adjusted a little bit in the second half, but for the most part, he was on fire. Kirk Cousins is just toast, man. I don't know. It was painful to watch that stuff. He just couldn't move the ball. I was shocked they were able to get that late field goal. To be honest with you, I was like, well, this is done. I should probably just start turning in my story. But yeah, I think it was kind of a lackluster first half, a really solid second half. And that sometimes happens with the defense. Sometimes it just has to kind of get punched in the mouth and wake up. And, they didn't really get a lot of great pressure in this game, but I thought they really readjusted in the second half to the run, and that's where they kind of benefited. 2-0 against Atlanta. That's kind of big.
Yeah, just real quick on Corey Thornton, just because I know that you love this part of the game. I think the normal person, and I even asked this on Friday, okay, so with Lathan out, does this mean more opportunities for Damani Richardson? Dave Cannell said that's something we're working through, and clearly it did not mean more opportunities for Damani Richardson. Can you explain how the defense deployed Corey, why they put Corey Thornton in at that nickel corner spot, and how much of a change schematically was required to put him in there?
Well, yeah, you're going to use Shaw Smith Wade's a guy who can play some safety. We've seen him go back there. We also saw Merrick play more, what you would call safety than he would be the big nickel.
Hmm.
Thornton's got really good size. He's a pretty good tackler for a corner. I also think he's much better in coverage than Richardson, so you're not really sacrificing one for the other there. I just think like Richardson was undrafted for a reason, and I think he's got some, he's got some quirks in his game. He's not a particularly good tackler for a guy his size. He's been opportunistic as a ball in the air defender, but I think like Thornton's a legitimate coverage man, and I think he's probably played really well in practice, and so they wanted to get him on the field. Lathan Ransom is about as sure of a tackler as you can be as a rookie.
Yeah.
He's not particularly great in coverage. And so you look at Thornton as being an upgrade in coverage, but not as good of a run defender, but yet he's still passable. I think Thornton's a guy they want around for a while. I could see him being the heir apparent to Mike Jackson in a couple of years. They're developing him really well. They got a guy there, and they knew that they had a guy pretty early on. I was hearing buzz about him during rookie camp and OTAs. This guy was like the guy to watch, and I think I was the first person that was like in the media that was like, "Hey, watch out for this guy," because the mix of size, the mix of intelligence, he's fearless, and that's really important at corner in the NFL. J.C. Horn was like just effusive in his praise in the break between OTAs and training camp. So like you knew he had something to him. And I think Shaw Smith Wade benefited from playing high and moving around, and that dime package when you have Merrig and Nick Scott and I know everybody wants to draw ire on Nick Scott. He actually played a pretty good game in my opinion. And then you have the two nickel defenders in Thornton and Shaw Smith Wade. I think it's a pretty good look. Not to say that Lathan Ransom should be benched, but I think maybe you look at the timeshare is mixing Ransom and Thornton based on tendencies and based on the package that they're facing. I think that that's not a bad problem to have. The more guys you can mix in there, the better.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. You want to talk about Monday Night Football?
Sure. The 49ers have a linebacker and safety coverage issue, and I think this is the time to go to the tight ends. Jatavian Sanders has seemingly regressed as a big play weapon. This is the one to unleash him. I think Mitchell Evans can have some success. I think Tommy Tremble in the red zone could be a factor. The guy who's been the mark on their defense has really been D. Winters, their weak side and nickel defender. Let me according to Pro Football Focus, he has been targeted 73 times for 62 catches. That's an 84.9% catch rate for 454 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Oh,
yikes. Jair Brown, one of their starting safeties, he's been targeted 21 times for 14 catches for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jason Pinnock, who's been around for a while, he used to be a corner, now he's a safety. He's been beat like a drum too. There's their stats as a coverage group have been awful. Like he's been targeted 15 times. Pinnock has been targeted 15 times or 16 times for 15 catches for 109 yards and 4 touchdowns.
My goodness.
And here's where it gets fun. So their best corner, Demondre Lennar, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is pretty good. But he has not had a lot of success as of late. He's been targeted 47 times for 31 catches. It's a 66% catch rate for 334 yards and 4 touchdowns. What I like about this is no matter who he's on, whether it's Xavier Legette or Jalen Coker or Tetairoa McMillan, they have a significant size advantage. Lenore's 5'10", 200 pounds. We know that T-Mac's about 6'4" and change. Jalen Coker, I believe, is 6'3". Xavier Legette might only be 6'2", but he's a whole lot of 230 or whatever he is. I think that that's a matchup they can exploit, especially in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, though, this is going to be a difficult task. I mean, their tackles have been playing out of their mind. Obviously, they have a pretty generational left tackle in Trent Williams. CMC is CMC, man. He is a juggernaut out of the backfield as a dual threat. George Kittle has not been lighting the world on fire, but he does have 5 touchdown catches this year, and we know how Weber's defense has struggled against tight ends. That's going to be tough. I think it's all going to matter about getting to Brock Purdy, but I don't know how you're going to do that from the edge positions. You're going to have to do it from the interior. You're going to have to see guys like Derek Brown and Turk Warden and Bobby Brown step up and make it hard to throw. Purdy is also a pretty relatively shorter quarterback, so you hope that you can mess with his coverage lines or his sight lines, excuse me. And look, Bryce isn't going to face a lot of pressure on his end because Nick Bosa's out, Fred Warner's been out. Bryce Huff, though, is a pretty good speed rusher. I'm wondering how they're going to use him against these 2 offensive tackles who clearly struggle against speed.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get on him early. You also have to wonder about the Saleh-Ulbrich relationship because they've been together for so long. You wonder how Saleh adjusts after seeing Ulbrich get kind of torched in this game this past week. So it's really interesting. I think the real advantage that they have is being on the West Coast and really the tight end and running back position because we know both of these teams are susceptible to giving up yardage down the middle. And I think the 49ers are banged up, but they're also proven winners. They've been, no matter who's been a quarterback and who's been out of the lineup, they've been formidable. And so it's kind of hard, even after what we saw on Sunday, to pick the Panthers. I still think it's going to be very close. I'm going to take the 49ers 24-23.
Oh, wow, that close.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a close game. It would not shock me if the Panthers pulled it out, but I just everything in me says this is a 49ers win. I don't think it will be a letdown the way that the Saints game was. I think that they're going to come to play. They're going to feel empowered and energized and feel like they can throw the ball on anyone. And I think it'll be a back and forth affair. I really do. I think they're going to put a lot into this. I think the 49ers are a better team.
Yeah. No, that's fair. It was kind of interesting. We were watching the end of the Panthers-Falcons game, and when the game is close, the Panthers haven't lost this year. I mean, I guess you can say they lost the Arizona Cardinals game, which came down to a final drive where they couldn't convert, but they were also coming back from forever, and they needed to get a crazy onside kick to even have a chance at it. So that's statistically a close game, but for most of that game, it didn't feel like it. They've found ways to win close games this year, which is a reason why they're 6-5 and a half game within the NFC division lead. I am going to say, I'm going to say that the Panthers win. I'm going to say that the Panthers are going to win, another close one, 31-28, something like that. Brock Purdy has transformed this 49ers offense. He had a big toe injury, which has kept him out for the majority of the year, and he comes back this past weekend, 3 touchdowns, 200 yards, a 133.5 passer rating. He looks phenomenal, and him and Kyle Shanahan have something really special going between them. I just think that it's crucial that the Panthers do have 1 week of game planning with Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy was coming back this week, fresh slate, I would think so differently.
31 points would be their season high. And that's part of the reason why I do have some concern is they put up 448 passing yards on the Falcons and still just managed 30 points. Now, 30
It was
points
a fair point.
in the NFL, but like, I don't know if they have the juice to win a shootout on the road. Like, their wins on the road, by the way, they've won 3 straight games on the road. I should say a shootout on the road against a team that can put up points the way that the 49ers have and the way that they run the ball. So their wins have been on the road 13-6, 16-13, and 30-27. I'm just curious what this defense can do to hold the 49ers at bay with how they attack the middle of the field.
Yep.
And, Merrick's going to have to tackle well. They're all going to have to tackle well, really. That's the reality. But, like...
And the Panthers defense is still struggling defending tight ends.
Right. I mean, we didn't really notice Kyle Pitts a ton this past weekend. Kyle Pitts isn't your typical tight end. So, that's the only thing. Like, I do think this will be a close game. I would not be stunned in any which way. I don't know what this team is. This is the only thing that's not enigmatic about the Panthers is Tetairoa McMillan, who is going to be an absolute star. And I've eaten crow on the Axis Panthers newsletter. I liked the pick. I didn't love it. Shame on me. He was phenomenal. I mean, he's awesome. Like, he is awesome. And making him more of a versatile threat as opposed to just like the isolated X is going to pay off dividends. He can be a special player. Like, you could see some pretty awesome upside with him. Mm-hmm. I think Dan Morgan nailed this draft. I think this offseason, all things considered, has gone exceptionally well with the return. But man, McMillan's awesome. The rest of the guys, it's like 1 week they're awesome, the next week they're awful. It's just, it's tough. For Bryce's sake, I hope that he can continue to do what he is doing, because that was a special performance. And I'm not trying to overstate it, but he needed that. Like, he needed that. I think the team needed that. I think the offense needed to see that. I think the front office needed to see that. I think the ownership needed to see that. And so hopefully he continues to do that, even when they play better teams and potentially lose. Remember, this is a team that you predicted to have 8 wins. I predicted to have 7 wins. They're already at 6 with 6 games to go. And I think we'll predict the final 4 games during the bye week show. But right now, if they can upset either the 49ers or the Rams, which I kind of feel good about the Rams game, by the way. They'll be in position to make a playoff push. They have to win one of these 2 games. And I'm kind of on the fence about this 49ers game. I think the Rams game, they have some opportunity there.
Yeah.
But that's for another week.
That is for another week. Great stuff, Mike. And here we go. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike K and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap.